We all got a story, and here's mine. 50 Cent had a line, "I write my life, you write what you've seen in gangster movies." And that was me. Now, I don't want to go into too many details, but I've seen some things. Drugs, gangs, talking to my mom through a jail cell, having a knife to my throat, friends getting prison bids. There's some darkness there. But even in all of the darkness, there was always light. From an early age, my mom taught me about God. She would say things like, "We made it this week because of God." Now, that was great, but I thought he was this genie-like figure. I thought he was like that guy in the Godfather's commercials with the big head and the big hat. I would turn to him if I got into trouble and didn't want to get in it, or if I thought I needed something and he'd be able to bail me out. But he was there all along. As I got into high school, I started to question, who's this Jesus guy? I started to question, what's this Christianity thing about? And just like every other Christian, I wanted a Jesus who was gonna bless my life, but not interfere with it. I started to believe the Christian lie, that you just had to be a good person. And how do we decide if we're a good person? We compare ourselves to those around us. So I started thinking about my boys in my old neighborhood, or my new friends, and compared to them, I was doing all right. I wasn't sleeping around all the time. I wasn't always getting high and faded. I was just sleeping with one girl, addicted to porn, and didn't care about anybody else. That's pretty good if you think about an average Christian guy in America. 2 weeks after graduating from high school, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She ended up passing away before I even started at UNR. To be honest, I was in survival mode. I knew I wasn't going back to where I came from. I started to grind. I went to work, did everything I needed to, except deal with my emotional baggage. By the time I got to sophomore year, I was treating my then girlfriend and now wife Brittany horribly. I was a ridiculous boyfriend, and thankfully we broke up. God knew I needed it. It was another season of darkness, but I needed it. I'd always heard, if you want answers, go to church. So I started coming to Summit every weekend, and every weekend I felt like Steve was talking to me. One thing became clear as I would go home and get into the Word thinking about what Steve had just said. I didn't understand the gospel, and I didn't understand the depth and severity of my depravity. It was only when I embraced how broken I truly was that I was able to see change. Britt and I were able to get back together, but this time we knew we had to build our relationship on Jesus. She accepted Christ and we got baptized together. I'm not gonna say it's been a perfect relationship since, but things have been a whole lot better. Those first few years as a Christian, I was honestly just playing religion. Now don't get me wrong, I witnessed unbelievable miracles from God. I was at church every Sunday, I was in the community serving, I'd even helped bring some people to Christ. However, it was all a front. It was all about me and what I was doing and the reactions I was getting from other people. And to be honest, I loved it. I fed off of it. I thought I could earn my way into God's grace. I thought that I could earn my way into being this amazing person. But in reality, I was just fooling myself. The deeper I got into this hole of religion, the more empty it felt. The more it felt like I was never gonna be able to live up to it. And so, once again, I found myself in another dark season in life. Those first few years I was a Christian, I was honestly just playing religion. Now don't get me wrong, I witnessed God do unbelievable miracles. I was at church every weekend. I was serving in our community. I'd even helped some people come to know Christ. But it was all a front. It was all about me. I loved getting the praise from people. I just wanted more and more of it. And it left me empty. I was in this vicious cycle of just trying to earn people's approval, earn God's approval. Yet there was nothing there. Once again, I was in this period of darkness. It was in this vicious cycle of guilt and shame, of trying to earn God's grace. But see, it left me exhausted. If you've ever played religion, you know it's exhausting and unsustainable. It wasn't until I realized that I didn't grasp the gospel until I started making any real progress. Yet, like most prisoners, I became comfortable in my cage and I started building my own kingdom. But what I realized is God's not interested in multiple kingdoms, so he started tearing my kingdom down. I graduated from UNR at 22, and I thought I was at the height of my kingdom. I was on top of the world. The day I graduated, I was on the front page of the Reno Gazette Journal. The president of the university gave me a personal shout out in the graduation speech. I had the opportunity to possibly come back and be a nursing professor if I ever wanted. I had the perfect job lined up in the ICU in Renown. I was gonna get the experience I needed to become a nurse anesthesiologist. I was married to my high school sweetheart, Brittany. I was making more money than my mom ever made in a year and 3 months. Things couldn't have been better. Yet I was miserable. And I'm not just talking about like, oh, I don't wanna get up today, I don't wanna do anything miserable. I'm talking about that I don't wanna get out of bed. I don't wanna look myself in the mirror. What is this all for, miserable? See, I understood what Solomon meant when he wrote in Ecclesiastes. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. That's what my life had become to. And this made no sense because this was everything that I had ever wanted. But that was the issue. It was everything that I ever wanted, not what God died on the cross to give me. See, I was more concerned about living out what I thought my purpose was than his purpose. And I'll be honest, even though I understood this intellectually, it took a lot of prayer and support from my wife and my brothers that I was in life group from to get me to move. See, that's the dangerous thing about when we build kingdoms. They become comfortable, and even when we know they're wrong, we don't really want to tear them down. I decided to give up my career in medicine. When I did, everybody thought I was crazy. They thought I'd be back within a few months, but they didn't get it. I realized God makes no mistakes. Everything that I had been through in life was for a reason. My reason was because I could connect with these kids. I could connect with kids who knew no hope. I could connect with kids who can look in somebody's eyes and see nothing but darkness. That was my story. When you try to talk to somebody like us, unless you know what we've been through, we don't really hear you. God put it on my heart to go back and work with kids that were like me. He didn't bless my life to give me a good life. He blessed my life to get me out of the darkness and help others get out of the darkness as well. The past 5 years have been amazing. As a teacher and counselor, I've had the privilege to work with students in many capacities. To some, I've become like a father figure, to others like a big brother, to others a mentor. I've often heard things like, "Mr. Green, you've changed my life." What they don't realize is they changed my life by allowing me to live out my purpose. You see, once I started living in my purpose, everything started to make sense. I started to truly understand the gospel. I started to understand not only the crucifixion, but the resurrection. He died to take care of my sins, but he rose to give me a life that I can enjoy not only in heaven, but also now. I masked it well for years, but even as I walked with Christ for a while, I still carried around a lot of this anger and bitterness. However, the more I explored how much I had hurt other people and the grace God had extended me, the more it became apparent that I needed to extend that same grace to other people. I can't tell you how freeing it was to be able to let go of some of these things that I'd held on to for 10, 15, 20 years. It also started to transform my ability to trust others. My coping mechanisms had been to isolate and to push people away. However, the more I understood Jesus, the more apparent it became community was not optional. Jesus lived out a life of example of living in community. He wanted to set that example for us because this brotherhood that we're talking about this weekend isn't an option, it's necessity. Life's hard. We all know that. There are gonna be things that we go through that quite honestly we can't get through alone. And not only do we need to rely on God as our capstone, but we need one another to help carry us through those seasons. Finally, he transformed me as a husband and a father. If I'm honest, I'm not capable of unconditional love. And as much as I try, I'm not the best husband or father. I try my best, and I think because I walk with Christ, I'm a lot better than I would have been. And I see that in the fruit of things that my wife says. Things like she knows that no matter what happens in life, I'm always gonna be there for her and my boys. It's an amazing feeling to know that some of the scars that I have to carry in life, they get to avoid just because of the transformation that he's given me. Now, we all got a story to tell, and we all face darkness in some type of form. We all have the option. Do we use temporary lights? Things like sex, drugs, porn, alcohol, things that won't last. Or do we choose to walk in his light, a light that's gonna obliterate us, completely rewrite our stories in ways we would have never imagined, but a light that can't be extinguished. a light that gives us eternal hope, and a hope that we can start living now. Thank you so much for listening to my story.